Women in Conflict Transformation.
Denise Hughes, South Belfast Alternatives Restorative Justice Project.
Reflecting back, what role did you play in the transformation of peace in Northern Ireland and across the world as a woman mediator?
Wow, that's a big question. I came late to this work in that I didn't do it straight from school. I didn't go to university until 1996 when I was already in my late 20s with a couple of children. And I did a very short, sort of 2 year degree for mature students, as they classified me at that point. And I did social policy because I knew I wanted to do something around people and life, but I didn't know what, and that was available. So I went and did that. I did that with the encouragement of my then partner, who became my husband, Brian. And Brian came from a very different background, very different kind of way of being. He was from a very middle class Catholic background. I came from a very working class Protestant background. And for him, changing your life came through education. It wasn't a thing that in my family that you did. If you wanted to better yourself, you got a job. So I went to university. It's funny because some people in my family, some people very close to me, were quite taken aback and weren't very supportive. Would have very much said, "Who do you think you are? What do you think you're going to be at the end of this?" But I did it. And coming out of university, I volunteered in a community safety project in Lisburn, where I lived. Loved it. Came from there, went to work for Niagara on a community safety project. Again, both those kind of very time limited projects. And while I was working in Niagara, I met a lovely girl called Claire who sat across the table from me. And I was sort of saying, I was feeling frustrated. The work wasn't doing and making the changes that I thought it could and should. And Claire very clearly said to me, "Denise, I know there's a job going and I think you would be perfect in it." And it was in mediation Northern Ireland, and it was on the policing programme. And the policing programme was called Policing Our Divided Society. And it was coming out of the patent reform. It was looking at the relationship between the police and the broader community. As we know, it was one of the issues. It was where there were fractured relationships. And the work that I was being brought in to do was to look at how police officers understood themselves and their role in building peace, not just policing streets. It was fascinating work. I did that for 6.5 years, working very closely with all of the institutions, working with some of the big names in community relations: Brent McAllister, the late and wonderful Derek Wilson, Duncan Morrow, Libby Keys. I mean, those were the people around me every week giving me support, setting the structure, looking at how this programme would be rolled out. We worked at every level. It was a systemic change. It was looking at organisational change in terms of the culture. And not just, other people were looking after the uniforms, the badge, the names, all of that. For us, it was about how people changed, how individual officers thought of themselves and thought about the communities they were going into police with. So very much that change in culture. It was massive in its time. I mean, it was we had scrutiny from everybody: the American government, the British government, our own politicians here, because at that time, I mean, I'm talking about the early 2000s when this started. It was before some of our community bought in to policing and justice. So it was very contentious. But watching how we thought about how you took an organisation structure and worked within it to impact and affect change the whole way through. So working within a power system like that and a dynamic like that was fundamental to how I learned the tools of conflict transformation. So thinking about it top up, top down and bottom up. I worked for Mediation Online for 10, 11 years. I worked on a number of different projects. And during that time, I did a lot of mediations as well, working with people in conflict, working with groups in conflict, working in areas, and trying, a lot of the time, trying to skill other people up. I think one of the fundamentals for me was an understanding that no one individual could ever solve all of the problems, that anything you did could only be your contribution, but that contribution, if you worked collaboratively with others and you worked in a way that was about bringing other people on, you can maximize that impact. So from the get-go, that's the training that was the whole culture of the way we worked. And that played out in some of the areas that I worked in, where we went in and we said, look, okay, there are community relations issues. We're not going to fix them. We're going to train you and support you to fix them yourself. So very much that was the ethos. I've gone around the community relations organisations thanks to short-term funding and I think sometimes to just wanting a different challenge and to do things differently. So about 4.5 years ago, I started working with alternatives, restorative justice. Debbie Waters, who I've known for a long time, way back to those policing days. I had a job going, looking at building relationships between ethnic minority groups, local Indigenous communities, and thinking about the different ways that we create spaces for engagement, for dialogue, for relationship building. So I came in to do that, and I've ended up now, 2.5 years ago, as the manager of South Belfast Alternatives, which is working in the area that I grew up in. So back to my roots, back to where is home, and that's a privilege. Part of my journey has been, I have had some incredible opportunities working in the different organisations, whether it was Mediation Northern Ireland and trips and visits to Washington to talk about policing, whether it was in ICR with visits to Kosovo and other places looking at, again, mediation skills for those working with displaced refugees and displaced people, or in now alternatives and visits to Colombia to work with women who have been not only the victims of the conflict there, but those who have found a way of having their voice heard. The Colombian experience for me has been completely inspirational and mind-blowing, because when I first went in 2016 with Monica McWilliams and Geraldine McAteer and Una, who was in the police at the time. I went as part of that 4-woman group and met some women who were living and working in the Putumayo region of Colombia, which is where the Andes meets the jungle, where the Andes meets the Amazon, so jungle region. Women who had been impacted in ways that it's hard to even talk about by the conflict. I mean, most of them had experienced displacement at least once. Most of them had experienced sexual violence in a way that you can't even imagine. Many of them had lost large members of their family. Many of them had family who were still disappeared. And yet these women who had nothing, I mean, they had no resources, found a way of building a network of women across this massive geographical area that is sometimes connected by river and boats. So the way they networked, the way they collaborated, the way they built their own power base, for want of a better word, and had their voice heard. Some of those women made it to the table in Cuba and had their voice heard in their peace process. And now I have engaged with bigger organisations like the European Union and the UN, and have got funding in and are doing incredible things. And I think while our conflicts are very different, the numbers game alone in terms of how many disappeared and dead, the size geographically, I think there is so much that we can learn from them in terms of resilience, of women collaborating, of those networks of support and places where women can learn and grow and build skills and build confidence to help other women. And they have done that in a way that has just been incredible.
If someone is new to conflict transformation and wishes to become a mediator, how or where would they start?
Honestly, for me, and I can only speak about what worked for me, starting locally, starting where you know, starting where your heart and soul are. So I think for women, trying to find those connections within your own community, looking at what's already there, seeing what you can bring to it, what you can add to it. Now, obviously, maybe then, if there aren't the skills, the training, the capacity building there, look outside. But I think there's something about starting with what you know and what you care about.
Looking forward, what more do we need in terms of community mediation for women?
I think at the minute there's a lot of organisations offering wonderful training and opportunities. What I'm not seeing a lot of are opportunities for women to network. And not just network, but find ways of being inspired, motivated, and spaces where women can reflect and think about, who am I? What am I doing? How does this connect to others? How, and as I said earlier, each of us can only make our contribution, but if we can't see that contribution in relation to other contributions, if you can't see how you're a part of the bigger jigsaw, then sometimes you can get overwhelmed. You can feel that, am I really making a difference? Am I being helpful in any way? So the whole idea of transformation, I think, unless you can see that, and I don't know that we have created enough of those spaces. I think we need more networks. I think we need, and funny, I was at a workshop a few days ago where we were talking about the difference between talking shops and non-talking shops. I'm very happy for talking shops. I think we don't have enough talking shops where we just talk and listen to one another.